Hey, welcome to Craft Central Designs. My name is Dwynn. In this tutorial, I'm going to share with you my very easy technique in creating a beautiful deco mesh wreath. This is my favorite mesh wreath, my go-to 99% of the time, because it is just beautiful and so easy to make. This wreath is a combination of loops woven in and out between the wreath frame wires using only one pipe cleaner. Okay, let's get busy on this wreath. From Dollar Tree, I picked up this 14-inch wreath frame. It's silver. I'm using a white deco mesh, so if you like, you can spray paint it white. Mine is just remaining silver. I do make sure that I use a lot of loops, a lot of deco mesh on my wreaths. I don't like to see any spaces between the deco mesh, so I'd rather buy an extra roll. And speaking of buying rolls at Hobby Lobby, every other week it's 40% off. So I have about 2.5 rolls that I'm going to use on this wreath. You need a pair of scissors and one pipe cleaner. This wreath is so easy to make that I actually sit on my couch and make it on my lap. I collect my rolls of deco mesh and I get a pipe cleaner and my scissors and I just sit on my couch, watch TV, and create this deco mesh wreath. All right, so what we're going to be doing, as I said before, we're actually going to just be weaving our deco mesh and forming our bubbles in between the wreath wires on this frame. First thing we're going to do is attach the beginning of our deco mesh on to the wreath frame. Now, everything we're going to be doing on this wreath, we're going to be pushing up from under the underside of the wreath. We're not going to be attaching on the top. We're going to be pushing up from underneath. And here you see me starting that process. I'm going to start right on one of the crossbars because that's the easiest place. Just take a little bit of a pipe cleaner and just attach that. We're going to be creating, I guess we could just call it bubbles. I hear a lot of people use that expression when it comes to deco mesh wreath, so let's just call it that. We're going to take just a small piece of a pipe cleaner and pushing up from the bottom. That's how we want to begin our wreath, and that's how we will be continuing to do all of our technique on this wreath, pushing up from the underside of the wreath frame, and you'll see what I mean by that in just a minute. You're going to twist that pipe cleaner and secure that end there. And what we're going to be doing is just going back and forth in between the spaces on the wreath frame. And that's why we do not need more pipe cleaners, because weaving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth is going to be our anchor for all of these bubbles. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. First thing I do is push up my first bubble. And I start my bubbles usually right through that middle space going down the wreath frame. And then I push it down with my fingers, and I want to form different shapes with my bubble. Now see how I have kind of it almost looks like a little, I don't know, a seashell or something like that. Okay, so I did my first bubble on my middle space. Now I'm going to go to the space on the outside, and I'm going to push my deco mesh up through there, form a bubble. Now as soon as you pull it through, it anchors itself on that wire, and then you don't have to worry about it. It'll be secure. Now we're going to open it up. I like to see the seam on both sides of my deco mesh. I can even let go. And I push it down in the center with my fingers. And I like, again, to create different shapes. My favorite shape that I try and create when I push down in the center looks like kind of like a fortune cookie. So I don't, in plain words, I don't pancake my bubbles. I like to create shapes. Now I'm going to go to back to the middle space. I'm going to pull my bubble up from underneath. Now that I pulled it through, it's hooked onto that wire. Seam to seam, I like to see. Push it down in the center. Now these bubbles come out to be about 6 or 7 inches. I don't really like my bubbles really, really big. I like them more petite or smaller. I'm going to hold that bubble until I push it through. Now I'm doing the inside space. Pull it through, open it up, see your seams there. And again, it's once you pull it through, it catches on that wire and it's secure. And then I push down in the center and look, I have that fortune cookie shape that I love. Okay, so now what are we going to do next? We're going to go through the middle wire because we just did the inside wire. Now we're going to go to the middle space. Push it through, pull it up. You can let go now because it's secure. You'll feel it catch on that wire underneath when you pull it through. Open up your bubble. See how I push it down in the center? And I love to make the shapes. See how I'm creating this very pretty look to my Deco mesh. We just went through the middle one. Now we're going to jump over to the space on the outside of the wreath frame. Open up my bubble. See my seams on the edge. Push it down in the middle. I like to give it like a little bit of a fold. That's how I get that fortune cookie look. I really like that on the wreath. I push it down with both fingers and I make sure I hold it there with my fingers until I go through the next space over. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the middle. So you're going just jumping from one space to the next. Open it up. And again, it's about 6 or 7 inches maybe that you're in actuality of space that your Deco mesh bubble takes up. And there's a nice fortune cookie right there. Okay, now we go to the inside space. So you're just jumping back and forth, space to space, if I can speak. Open up the bubble all the way to the seams on the side. Push it down in the middle. Now you can always, if you get your bubble too big, you can just pull it through like I just did and push it down in the center and form like a nice shape to your bubble. Now, we just did the inside space. Now we're going to go to the middle. Back to the middle. We're going to push it up through. It's the same thing over and over and over. Once you get used to this technique, you're going to love it. Open it up. Push it down in the middle. And that's a pretty one. I put a lot of concentration in creating like unique looks to each bubble. You'll see how pretty this looks in the end. And now we go to our outside space. And notice how all of my bubbles, if you will, face the path, if you will, of the circular path of the wreath. They don't face to the outside. They don't face to the inside. They just face the pathway of the wreath. I hope that makes sense. Push it down in the middle. Now we're on the outside. Now where do we go next? We're going to go right to the middle one. Just keep going back and forth and back and forth. Your wires on your wreath form take the place of all the pipe cleaners. Once you push it through, right here, it's going to catch on that wire of your wreath frame, and that acts as your anchor. Push it down in the center. Manipulate your shape there a little bit. See how pretty? This is gives the wreath just such a pretty look. And we're going to the inside one now. You'll get used to this, and it becomes very second nature if you do a lot of deco mesh wreaths anyway. Always the same thing over and over and over. And see how I push down? And I almost like sometimes fold it in half after I push it down, just to create different shapes. Everyone can be unique. Every bubble can be different in shape. Okay, now we're going back to the middle one because we just did the inside space. Pull it through. It catches on the wire. Open it up, seam to seam. See how I did that? Push it down in the center. I'm showing you with my finger there. And I kind of fold it a little bit. And see, I have unique shapes every time. And now we go to the outside because we just did the middle space. Pull it through. It catches on the wire. You can even let go. It's secure there. Open it up, seam to seam. Just keep an eye on your loops so that they remain somewhat symmetrical. And like I said, it usually turns out to be, if you were to stretch out the loops, maybe 6 inches. Look how pretty. Okay. Now we're going back to the middle. I didn't speed this video up because I wanted to be sure that you could really see the technique involved in this deco mesh wreath. Seam to seam, open it up, take your fingers, push it down in the middle, kind of give it a unique look, a little bit of a fold, curl it, fold it over, curl it a bit. Again, like I said, you can make each of your loops just a little bit unique in the way that you shape them. That gives your wreath a visual interest. Pull it through on the inside space now. Open it up with your fingers all the way seam to seam. Push it down in the middle. You saw me do that? And I hold that loop there until I go to the next space and push that next loop up through there. Once you pull that loop through or the bubble through, it catches on that wreath wire. I know I keep saying that, but just so you understand, you don't need all the pipe cleaners. Okay. Let me push through. Now we're on the outside space. I'm showing you the wire there. Open up your bubble. Push it down in the middle. And that was a pretty fortune cookie there I just did. So this is a very easy technique. As you can see, is nothing complicated about it. Once you get into the groove of doing this, really easy. Like I said, you can watch your favorite TV show and do this at the same time. See that pretty curl? See how pretty that looks? Creates a very beautiful wreath. Just make sure that you go from one to the other. Outside to the middle, to the inside, back to the middle, to the outside, back to the middle. You get the idea. Open up your bubbles. Push it down in the center. Give it a little pull back through if you need to. And see, I folded that up and I got like a really nice shape there. And as I go, I do push down on my bubbles, if you will, because I don't want spaces. When I'm finished with the wreath, I don't want to look at my wreath and see a bunch of spaces. So I make sure, like I said, if it requires buying an extra roll of deco mesh, so be it, because I like my deco mesh wreaths not to have spaces. When you hold it up to the light, it should be solid. That was a pretty loop there. So I think you get the idea. And we're still going here. Push it through. See, I was pulling on it just to show you how it catches on that wire once you pull it through. Open it up, push it down in there, create your shape of your bubble. Back to the middle. So you can see this is really an easy process. Once you watch it over and over, you can see that this technique is really very easy to do. Pull it through. It's caught on that wire down there underneath. Push it down in the middle. Create your shape. As long as you keep track of which space you did previously, you'll have no problems with this technique. And if you make a mistake, you'll notice right away, because you won't be able to form the loop. It will pull away from the wreath frame, and you'll have to just correct your mistake. There's a nice, pretty fortune cookie shape. Through the middle. Should be getting the idea by now. See, I'm pulling on it to show you that it's secure. Open it up, seam to seam, your bubble. Push it down in the middle. And through the outside, pull your bubble through. Open it up. Push it down in the center. And there you go. Very pretty. Okay, so now we are pretty much at the end of that first roll. So we're going to have to secure this. I have just enough there in my hand there to make one more loop. So we're going to push it up through there, and we're going to conclude that first roll, or the end of the deco mesh of the roll, the same way you started, with a little pipe cleaner. So it's not absolutely necessary for it to end up on the crossbar, so don't worry about that. If your roll ends and you're not quite at a crossbar, just don't worry about that. You can attach your pipe cleaner virtually anywhere you are on the wreath, just so long as you wrap it around the wreath wire, nice and secure. Because as soon as you start a new roll, you're just going to be pushing up against that anyway, so it's just going to be an added stabilizer for your deco mesh. Okay, so to start a new roll here, you're going to do exactly as you did before. I'm going to struggle a little bit getting the wrapper off of this deco mesh from Hobby Lobby. I just love it. But their labels and their packaging is like, oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing as we did before. You're going to pinch the end exactly the same way you started. Now you could see that that one roll of Deco mesh pretty much covered half of that wreath form. The reason why I said 2.5 rolls is because I love to make what I call coils. After the basic bubbles are all completed on the wreath form, you'll see what I like to do, but I like to add an embellishment, which I call coils, but you guys have seen this 1,000 times on YouTube, how to make those, but I'll show you in just a minute. And we're back to the same technique. Pull your bubble through, seam to seam, push it down in the center, and continue on with the wreath. Same technique. All the way until you meet up with the other side of the Deco mesh. Pull it through, push down in the center, space to space to space. Creating different shapes, remember? So you can see how each time I do it, I probably have like a little bit different shape, but I love that. Okay, so here it is in all its gorgeousness. Oh my gosh. All right, so what I've done in the meantime is I created those coils. So usually what I do is I do like a number of coils at one time because I'm not really sure how many I want on there. It's basically just by looking at it, I decide that. I don't have a specific number. What I'm really using those coils for is to embellish any areas where I can actually see any of the wires of the wreath frame when I hold it up to the light. Now I cut 12-inch pieces of Deco mesh and very loosely I roll it up. You know this technique already. But I only do one piece per coil. I don't add anything onto that. I just use a little pipe cleaner and I wrap it around. Now you can attach these coils, if you will, right to the wreath frame if you like. But I often use hot glue. I don't always attach them with pipe cleaners. You do you. That's up to you. But what I usually do after I finish my basic wreath is I go around the wreath form or the wreath itself and see where I need to fill in spaces. And I just cut that many coils. And then I go around and attach them. Here we have the coil. Now you can do this with hot glue, or you can just use the pipe cleaner and just dig down in there and attach it to the wreath form. Easy enough. And again, I like it very solid, filled in. And then when I put my coils in with the hot glue, I put one finger in one side of the coil and one in another, and I push it down in there and hold it so it's nice and snug. It actually attaches to the wreath frame as well as the surrounding Deco mesh. See, I have my glue gun there. Again, if you prefer to attach it with pipe cleaners, that's easy enough to do as well. You do you. It also depends, for me, if I'm going to have the wreath outside in the outside elements. I live in Florida, so it's very hot and humid a lot of times of the year, but I wouldn't really be leaving a Deco mesh wreath out in too many months anyway, because usually these are seasonal wreaths for special holidays, so they don't really spend much time on the door anyway. And here we have this beautiful Deco mesh wreath with the coils and these shaped bubbles. And here we go. This is it. I hope you enjoyed learning this method, or perhaps you already do it, but I don't see too many people on YouTube doing this technique. But I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. If you like what you see, please do so. And until next time, take care.